Oh, great, you made it.
Yes, I found the spot that you wanted me to meet you at.
I know it could be a little hard to get to, so thank you for following those directions so well.
Of course. So why did you want to meet me here in these woods?
Well, I wanted to tell you an actual, true story. This story is about two podcasters that set out to discuss classic episodes of a truly terrifying show that took place in these very woods. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I call this story The Tale of the Spooky Podcasters. Welcome to this week's Radical Retro Rewind. We are talking 1990s cult classic, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Again, joining me is my incredible guest, Rob from Brunch with the Halliwells and Movie Geek and Proud. Welcome back, Rob. Thank you so much.
Of course, Ryan. So glad to be back once again. And let me just point out that I have heard your second episode, and it is really, really good. For those who have not heard it yet, they did an episode on Gem and the Holograms animated cartoon, and it is so full of information. I had no idea that's what this show was. I don't have too much memory of it, and listening to your episode, it completely blew my mind that the show is what it is, and I had no idea. And so if you guys had any interest in hearing about Gem and the Holograms, again, listen to his episode. It's so good. So I'm so glad to be back on the show.
That was so sweet. Thank you so much.
But it does make me curious to go back and watch it somehow, because it was completely different than what I thought it was. So yeah, I mean, if it's anything like a soap opera, I am so down.
It's so soap opera-y, but it also has such a magical 80s glitter on it. So you get the songs, but then you also get Child Protective Services.
Yeah.
So Rob, on his amazing podcast, as I can't say enough, my favorite podcast of all time, Brunch with the Halliwells, the original Charmed podcast, where he and his co-host Sean go through each episode one by one, review it. They just had their 100th episode.
Yes, we surpassed episode 100, or I guess in our case, the 100th recap episode, as we've done like bonus episodes in between. So I'm sure we've surpassed 100 earlier, but I'm most likely, I think when this is posted, it'll either come out that same week or the following Sunday in October will be our 100th episode. So I find that to be a wonderful milestone for me personally, because I didn't think that I would make it this far, to be honest. Sean could have easily just been like, I hate this show, it's dumb, and it's no Buffy, and I don't want to do the show anymore. And he has just kept going, and I love that. And I'm excited that I was able to make it to 100. So yeah, so far so good.
He's going because he's actually enjoying the show.
Yeah, I genuinely think that he does like it, and to the point of at least watching it in the pace that we're doing and being able to talk about it with someone, I think also helps too. But yeah, so far he does like it. I mean, there are some episodes that are not as good as others, but as a first viewer, he's enjoying it. So yeah, that's every Sunday during brunch time is usually when I post episodes.
And of course, there is a Patreon for anyone out there who wants early access to any of these episodes and bonus content.
Sometimes we'll do a bonus episode here and there. And yeah, Patreons are able to suggest the type of episodes that we give just exclusively for them. But Sean and I usually try and concentrate on other witchy topics or themes, to complement Charmed, and just stay in that sort of witchy theme vibe. So yeah, it's fun. I think anybody who is a fan of witches in general, not just Charmed, will enjoy our show.
So to get into a little more witchy news, let's head into our retro news segment. Last week, I discussed with David that the Craft reboot was coming out, and at the time, there was no trailer Well, the trailer dropped. And matter of fact, Rob sent me this trailer. What do you think, Rob? What did you see that you enjoyed? What did you see that you might question?
Okay, so I really enjoy the original. So if anything I say comes off as bias, I do apologize. I looked at this trailer and judged it for what I saw, regardless what the movie is going to be, right? I got to say that I am very curious. I am not turned off by this movie at all. I love witches in general, and I want to support those witch movies that are out. I'll start with what I don't like. What I don't like is the advertising campaign they have for this movie. I think it is a total disrespect to the original that they are going to release a trailer less than a month before its release. No talk shows, no huge articles about it. They didn't talk about it any earlier. It's just a movie that they just want to put out on Prime. And not to hate on movies that do that, I just think that this movie should be given a little bit more respect because it is a remake of a 90s movie that is almost a classic at this point. As far as in the witchy category, to be PG-13, to be relatable, to hit 90s marks so good on the timing, the language, the everything, and then to just be like, yeah, here's a charmed sequel. And then, like, no, I think it deserves a little bit more respect. The other thing that I don't like is the fact that they've titled the movie Legacy. That is the worst thing that you can do because they are looking for those ties from the first one to complement the original. You don't put Legacy on there unless you've got almost every cast member from the first one in this one. You like the ties between the two better be legit. Otherwise, Legacy whatever. Like, that's not good. I don't like that. The other thing that unfortunately did not hit the mark with me is the CGI. It just seems like these Instagram and TikTok filters are clearly being used to relate to the somewhat teens that are using those devices. And I mean, as you saw in the trailer, it just didn't look, I don't know, maybe these girls are into that type of beauty and makeup and all of that stuff, but I mean it just didn't look right even for a teen. I'm an adult, I get it, the movie is not for me, it's for the teens. Maybe the teen will love this special effects, but for me, I can't.
I'm wondering if it's the one scene that I'm thinking of that stands out with the CGI, the one bathtub scene where it looks like fireflies are like hovering around, but it's like the cheapest looking, like Rob is saying, like Snapchat filter looking glittery effect. But I think we are somewhat of the audience because they do want to appeal to original fans. But you're right, they're not doing a very good job. There's no articles, there's no, oh, this is a 1990 classic that is being rebooted. Every other reboot gets articles continuously. So I wonder if that is asking some things.
Yeah. The last thing that I'll mention as far as what I don't like is the fact that I don't enjoy movies that are reboots but also sequels. I think you should pick a lane because what we're seeing is a continuation of the first story, but magically they just so happen to be saying the same phrases,
Yes.
doing the same tricks. And the way that the trailer set it up, which I do enjoy, is that we're seeing this reboot fashion of, oh, they're doing light as a feather, stiff as a board. Watch out for those weirdos. They're initiating this one girl into the group. There's the one black girl. So, I mean, I know it's ridiculous, but they're keeping the same sort of outline. Then later in the trailer, we get a reveal of a photograph of someone from the original, which now tells us it's a sequel. I lost it at that point. I was like, oh my God, this is a sequel. Yay. Right. But given the rest of the trailer, they're still repeating a lot of the things that happen. So unless there is a literal meta reason to be going through the same scenes as before, oh, let me put a spell on a guy that I like. It's either a different dimension going through the same thing. Fate will always go through the same format. Whatever, I don't know. It's ridiculous to do a sequel and a reboot at the same time. I don't like that. But here's what I do like. This is what I really like. The fact that The Craft is being remade differently. I didn't want to see the same movie again. It looks like they are changing a few things. And from the trailer, and I could be wrong, but from the trailer, it seems that in the original, they initiated the fourth, and she was our protagonist. She was the
Yes.
good witch. In this one, it looks like they are initiating a new girl who comes off as someone who needs a hug, but I think she is going to turn into the bad one,
The Nancy
the
character.
Nancy character. And I think that is a wonderful twist. Hopefully, that's the direction that they're going, because this new girl is it's getting way into her head. She's getting a little too sinister, and I think when it's time to bind somebody, it's going to be this new girl. So we'll see. The other thing I really like is David Duchovny is in this. Praise him.
Where did he come out of?
I know, right? I love that David Duchovny is in this film. I think that's great. I also love the fact that one of our four witches is a trans woman.
Did I miss that?
You missed that. Yes. I didn't really catch her name in the trailer, but I believe she was the tallest one out of the group. And yeah, so that is played by a trans actress, and I am so happy that that is included in this new one, because if anyone needs to, I think she's playing the Nev Campbell one that doesn't really want to show her body. She's very shy. She's covered up in all these clothes, and I think hopefully in some part of the movie she's going to get that confidence, like, I'm trans, I don't care, and I'm going to love that forever. So hopefully that storyline is used correctly. And you guys probably can't see me, but I'm a person of color. I'm African American, and I also think that our signature Black Witch is going to be everything. Just from what I saw in the trailer, I think she is going to be so good. Everything. I just from the trailer, she looks badass, and I cannot wait.
I'm wondering if she's the lead witch.
Yeah, it really kind of seems she might even be sort of the lead in this, but their powers are also enhanced. They're doing a lot of telekinesis in this, and that is something that they didn't do much of in the original. I think they might even fly more. So I want to watch it. I'm excited to watch it, but I, I I don't think that it's going to be anywhere close to the first one, and I don't want it to be. What I want is to see a really smart film, and to not to treat their young audience like idiots. They do not need a kid version. I think they are old enough and smart enough to deal with a real, somewhat gritty movie like the first one did. Yeah, October 27th.
Available on Amazon Prime.
Yup.
Okay, to continue with witches, we get another reboot. This time it's Angelica Houston's The Witches from 1990. But this time, we got Anne Hathaway, Octavia Spencer, and Chris Rock is the adult narrator. This looks amazing.
You think this is good?
I'm excited. I feel like The Witches terrified me as a child. Oh my god, when those women lose their hair.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Terrifying. Angelica Houston in that movie was amazing.
I am excited for this. I think that they changed it up enough to make it its own, as I was saying about The Craft. Am I going to miss the darkness of the first one? Yes, I'm going to miss that quite a bit, but I'm okay, because you know what? I trust Robert Zemeckis. He's one of my favorite directors. I trust him. This movie hits such a mark with me because of their amazing practical effects, and I don't think we're going to get that. I think everything's going to be CGI, from her transformation to the rats. It sucks that we may not get a lot of practical effects, because that makeup in that first one was so good. But the only thing that I want in The Witches is hopefully we get at least one scene that is just as dark as this first scene in The Witches, and that is when that random woman comes down and tries to talk this kid out of the tree to get some chocolate, and he was calling for his grandma, and she was trying to talk him down. Like, that whole scene is terrifying. I don't know if we're gonna get a heavy scene like that in this first one. I think this remake is just going to be a lot of fun,
A lot
full
of
of bright
copy.
colors and just a lot of shenanigans and a lot of action and a lot of special effects. It does look like there's going to be a lot of interaction between the grandmother and the Grand High Witch. I want to see those two duke it out. And
That's what I'm actually looking forward to the most.
yeah, yeah. And Stanley Tucci. That's all I need.
So this movie comes out on HBO Max starting October 22nd,
The
right in
week
time for
before
Halloween.
The Craft.
Before The
Yeah,
Craft.
so it's like
Yes.
1 week. Yeah, 1 week apart. So we'll have something for this Halloween season.
So this is a very witchy year.
So I put out a poll on my Brunch with the Halliwells Instagram, and I asked everyone which movie they're more excited for, and I believe it came out to 58% to 42% for The Witches.
I think I might have voted twice on 2 different accounts. So
But what are you more excited to watch, The Witches or The Craft Legacy?
because I did love The Craft, and I feel like that's such a movie of our time when we were growing up and we were young adults. I would have preferred The Craft, but seeing the two trailers next to each other, I have a feeling that The Witches is just going to beat it. Not only, yes, it's going to be, it looks like a bigger budgeted movie. So, of course, like you said, the colors are popping. But I am also a little nervous about the legacy part, like you're saying, and the mixing of a reboot. And how is it magically, yes, that we're having the same conversations, the same scene by scene? Are they going to the beach? What's going to happen? As of now, I'm going to say The Witches is what I'm looking forward to.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I'm more excited for The Witches, but I am more curious about Craft.
100%. But I feel like I'm hoping that curiosity doesn't come back to bite us after.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Without further ado, this week's topic. So, Are You Afraid of the Dark was another show that scared the crap out of me growing up. So, what is with us in the 90s? They wanted children to be afraid? A constant state of mortification?
Well, I mean, I think that even as kids, it's fun to play tricks and Halloween has always been presented as a horrific holiday as opposed to a joking, trickster holiday. April Fool's Day, we could easily just be like, "Ooh, that's the trick one." And then even in Halloween, this is also a trickster holiday, but this is when we get that sort of semi horror excitement and adrenaline into kids as much as we can. We want to wear scary costumes as opposed to friendly and funny ones. And I think shows like this were needed.
And evidently we turned out all right. I mean,
Yeah.
we're doing podcasts, we're not doing anything else. We're not
Yeah, exactly.
causing ruckuses. So the last time that Rob was on, I said that he basically knows everything. A few years ago, Rob had a podcast that can be found currently on YouTube called Bitch, I Ain't Scared. And he had the most amazing conversation that basically covered every episode, I feel like, of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Every storyteller, every character. This is episode 36 if anyone's interested in finding this, but he had the most in-depth conversation that I almost felt bad asking him to come back on the show this week to discuss an episode, because this is really the definitive conversation for me. I feel like I listened to it. How long was it? It's a quite a good chunk.
Yeah. So Bitch I Ain't Scared was a horror podcast that I had started. It was my very first one that I had, and I did it with a friend of mine. So he had a coworker who is obsessed with this show, if not pulp culture in general. And so we had to have him on the show. And he was more of the expert than I was. I had good memory on most things, but if anything, he would correct me on things that I may have said or announced differently. Yeah, throughout just a casual conversation, we almost ended up talking about every single episode as far as the first set of seasons, which was 1 through 5. That was the first set before it got revived later on. But yeah, we basically just kind of talked about in any shape or form what episodes we like, dislike, cameos, things like that. And yeah, we almost ended up hitting every single one. And yeah, it was a really fun conversation, and just to talk about a show like this with other adults who watched it as much as I did. But I barely had any friends watching this with me when I was younger, and now I'm old and can can talk about this as if it's on right now. I mean, there were a lot of fans for this show, I think. But on YouTube, you would find it under Fear Bias. Bitch I Ain't Scared is abbreviated into Bias. And so Fear Bias is how you find the page. And then, yeah, like you said, episode 36 is where we have this almost 90-minute conversation about Afraid of the Dark. And we try and hit as much facts and trivia as we can, but we mostly just share our love for the show.
They hit a lot of facts. You will remember things that you didn't even know you remembered when they're discussing this. They also have a Goosebumps episode, so along the same lines, 90s kids, it was either Goosebumps, I feel like, or Afraid of the Dark. Which one did you prefer? Did you have a preference?
So I remember asking this question on the episode, and I was definitely going to ask you at the end of this, but no, Afraid of the Dark was my jam because it was scarier, and I preferred that over Goosebumps. I think Goosebumps had better twists, but Afraid of the Dark, definitely I have more of a latch onto than Goosebumps does.
Same for me. I feel like Goosebumps, though, had more of the public awareness because of the books, and it was just so popular for so long. You can get the masks, and, you know, it was such a pop culture phenomenon. But Are You Afraid of the Dark is such a product of its time. It captures things, I feel like, so beautifully when they're not torturing children and having them turn into some kind of creature. So we both picked 2 episodes that we wanted to bring for this week. Both of us watched each other's episodes. Rob, what did you pick?
So I have a lot of favorites in this show. I mean, this show produced some of the best storytelling that I've ever heard as far as a kid, and when you compare it to other anthology stories like, Tales from the Crypt, Creepshow, things like that, we weren't old enough technically to watch that stuff, even though I did. But at the same time, we were given something that kids can watch and still fall into that same sort of format the way that the adults can watch their horror anthologies, right? So, the episode that I'm presenting is maybe not the best episode of the series, but it is my favorite, and that is Laughing in the Dark.
I feel like this is a classic of the series. If people remember anything, it's the clown episode.
Yeah, so this was the second episode that aired. This was what's so funny about this show because it aired in Canada, I believe a year, maybe almost 2 years before it hit US. From what I remember, the series aired in Canada, and I think maybe a year, almost 2 years, it didn't hit US because the US rejected it. The Nickelodeon, or I can't remember if there was another network that tried to get it, and they didn't like it. They were just like, we're not doing this. But then the showrunners of New York, I think, went under, different leadership. And the person, looked at the script and read it and all this stuff. And they were just like confused as to why this wasn't picked up before. Because this is genius. And so it took a while for the American audience to really latch onto this while it was airing in Canada this whole time. So as far as premiere dates go, they're a little different. But this is the second episode of the series. But this was my first episode.
I feel like this was my first episode too.
So again, it gets a little bit different because even in the DVDs, if you were to buy it, the first episode is the Phantom Cab, and this is the episode where we already have a group and they're initiating or auditioning for a new group, and that's Frank, and he is the person that creates Dr. Vink, right? And so that was supposed to be the first episode, but the one that I saw first was Laughing in the Dark, and then Phantom Cab I think was next after that. But what's also funny is that technically Phantom Cab wasn't even the first episode. So there was a Halloween special that aired that had nothing to do with the whole series as a whole. On Halloween, they just put something out there in 1990, and it was the Tale of the Twisted Claw. Because the episode aired on Halloween, and they had a Halloween theme in the episode. So that aired first, then the series.
So was that almost possibly a pilot / one-off special, but hopefully it was going to get picked up into something? And
it was one of the two, and I think it almost took a year for the series to come out, even though that Halloween special was first. I had no idea of this show. show as far as a Halloween special. My first experience was Laughing in the Dark. It was brilliant. Now, I believe at this age I was already exposed to Stephen King's It, so I knew how clowns could be scary, right? So with that being said, I'm watching this episode and I'll just give like a brief sort of rundown of it and then we can just talk about it. So basically it is about three kids, Josh, Ouija, and Kath. They are all at an amusement park and they have sort of this loving friendship but heavy rivalry on making sure that the other is like a scaredy cat. All they do is just poke fun at each other for being the scariest one of the group. And so they approach this attraction where it's just sort of like a mini haunted house that has been revived as a haunted house with a Zeebo the Clown sort of theme to it. Basically, you go through the house and then you end up in this room with a whole bunch of doors. Pick the right door and you'll go free. Pick the wrong door and there he'll be. So basically, one of the doors has the clown, Zeebo the Clown. He just pops out. And then one of the doors has the exit while the rest are decoy. Let me just point out that this story is told by Betty Ann, who is my favorite storyteller.
She is something, Betty Ann.
She is. And one of the reasons why I really love her stories is because not all of them end in happy endings. And I think that serves as a twist, but also you have no idea where her stories are going to go. Her story in this episode technically did not get a introduction, a campfire introduction. It eventually got the introduction, but not at first, because usually every episode would start with the group of kids, then lead into the episode. This one started her story, then went back. And if I remember correctly, this is also the only episode that went back to the kids more than twice.
I was going to ask you that because going back to watch this episode, I thought it cut off the beginning when they were telling the story because it did go right into the story before the campfire.
Yeah.
There wasn't many episodes that did this, right?
No, not many. But a big thing was that they wanted to make sure that the kids that were watching this show were watching a story being told and that this wasn't real. So they had to remind everyone that this is a story being told by other kids. So they would cut back to the campfire kids to remind you this is just a story, it's not real. Then they would go back. So that was the reason why you got that little interlude.
It makes sense too. It does cut the tension, especially if you are terrified.
Exactly. Back to the story, they are approached by this sort of carny person, the person running the ride, and he encourages him to go, and they pass. So then they're like, oh, nobody wanted to go in, you must be scared. So they make a bet. Who is it? It's Josh, played by Kristen Tessier. So he is challenged to go through the ride, and hopefully not be scared. But they want proof that he goes all the way through the ride. So he says, well, I'm going to steal the clown's nose when I go through. And this is what I found so funny, too, is because he may have won. So he goes through the house, or the haunted house, and he grabs the nose. But what they don't know is that he was scared the whole time.
Whole entire time, right.
So just because he completed the bet doesn't mean he wasn't scared. And I just think that's so funny is that this whole bet was ridiculous in itself. But he steals the nose.
He picked the right door first, too, right? He would have gone free.
Yeah, he picked the right door. He could have gone through and gone out, but he needed to get that nose to prove his point, so he had to go and find the nose. So he steals the nose, and this is where we find out that you've desecrated this person's resting place, because it turns out that Zeebo the Clown is based on an actual person. There was a clown named Zeebo who smoked cigars like crazy, but he also was a criminal. He stole a payroll of the circus, and he ended up getting chased by police into this haunted house, and because of his cigar smoking, he burnt the ride down with him inside. So that means that he is resting there, and the fact that you stole his nose, the ghost has arisen, and it is hinted that he will be haunted until the nose comes back. So the rest of the episode basically plays off with these little nods that this ghost or some kind of being is following them and eventually wants his nose back, if you want me to go away. So there's a lot of things that we can talk about, but basically he gets scared and pushed into returning back to the ride and given the nose back. And he also leaves an offering, a box of cigars, in good faith, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to steal your nose. And then the ride lets him out. And then we find out that the carney says his line again. It's the most fun in the park when you're laughing in the dark. But then he pulls out a cigar and smokes it. Now, this tells us that the carney is not only a ghost, but is Zebo the clown the whole time.
I love that twist.
Ooh.
First off, I love that this kid, Josh, was able to buy back in the day a carton of cigars.
Now, I think that he stole that from his father, because how would he even know what cigars smell like to begin with, in my opinion?
That's one of my favorite parts as well, when he's outside his house and he just sees this smoke coming from basically the side of his house, and he's like, that's cigar smoke.
Yeah. So, so my theory is he stole that from his dad. I can't be dealing with haunted houses. I am still to this day scared to go through them. I don't care how cheap looking or cheesy they are. It's really hard for me. I get very tensed up. So just the plot of this is already scaring me. And yeah, I think there were a little bit of tension when I was watching it when I was younger, but it was a fun tension. You know, I got a thrill out of watching this, even though it did scare me a little bit. I didn't get any nightmares or anything like that. I didn't develop any phobias. This was a fun scare.
You didn't develop a clown phobia like...
I like when you can get scared, and I think that this is a story that, you know, I think is a good example of what I wanted, and so I kept watching it, and I thought it was great.
One of the things that Zebo does do is he calls Josh and he does that bring it back over the phone. And it's scary and it doesn't need to take much. So you don't need to see Zebo to see anything to be afraid. Matter of fact, the biggest scare for me is when Josh is in his bedroom and he's seeing doorknob turn.
Yeah.
Always terrifies me in real life. Just imagine you're sitting there in your apartment, your house, and you just see the doorknob turn and a shadow underneath. Oh.
So this is what's also great too, because I mean, they did show sort of hints, you know, it's off camera. You don't know exactly what's going on. But, you know, maybe somebody else is playing a joke. Maybe it's not really some entity or anything like that. And, you know, he calls Ouija and he's like, look, stop messing with me. I know it's you. And he goes, what are you talking about? And it's like, oh, they could be playing a joke on him. And then the phone picks up and he's like, Kathy, is that you? Are you on the other line? And, you know, if you don't give it back, I'll come up and get it. And then Ouija goes, who was that? He's like terrified. And I'm just like, oh my God, that to me tells Josh that this shit is real. But it's also a super nod to the phone calls is coming from inside of the house. You know, when a stranger calls, it's total. That in itself, that whole entire scenario is scary by any means. Like,
parents are out of the house, so we added that he's home alone, so his parents aren't there. So when he gets this phone call, and a matter of fact, when Ouija says, we don't have another phone.
Oh, it's coming from your house. I was like, stop, yes. But he locks the door, it's banging, and then you can see the footsteps under the creak of the door. Like somebody's out there. And for kids, I think that's a little too far, in my opinion. Like, the door was banging. Like, somebody was trying to come through, for sure.
Like, I mean, he climbs out his bedroom window, and I remember this scene as a kid because I'm thinking that Zebo is about to break down that door, and he's gonna catch him right as he's trying to come through the window and go down the...
Well, yeah, he climbed out of a window and jumped on an inflatable floating swimming
pool.
Yes. Because, you know, this rich boy's got a swimming pool in his backyard and shit. And yeah, so this kid, first of all, let's talk about this kid. He is like born a bully. Like, he is so typecast. Not only was he a bully in this episode, but also on another episode of the show, The Curious Camera, he played in that as well.
You're right. There's those actors that are born to be bullies.
Yeah, he bullied Eddie K. Thomas, who was in The Curious Camera. He also was a bully, I believe, in a Goosebumps episode as well. I really, really wish that I can remember the episode that he was on, but I believe he also showed up on Goosebumps as well, playing another bully. I mean, this is who he is, and I just thought that was funny. But what a punk. Like, I would not want a friend like him. It's just, maybe I'm just too nice, but I don't understand why they're friends. I really don't. I mean, it was nice that they apologized to each other, like within
Right.
the episode, and it was like, I'm being a baby and I was being hard on you. Like, I get it. They're probably really good to each other, but like, he's a dick. Like, I would not want a friend like him. Like, all of that taunting, I would get tired of so much.
And I love the little sister, Ouija's little sister.
She shows up in another episode as well. If you remember the tale of Old Man Corcoran, one of the other scariest things in this episode was Zebo's theme. I love this circus sort of creepy mixture of sounds and music that gave him the theme. His theme was great. I love the theme. Sounds like an ice cream truck theme, which can also be scary depending on the time of the day. But I loved his theme. I thought that was great. And this was also a little weird. Can we put like an epilepsy warning, please, on this? Because if you remember, the door that opens up at the end where Zebo's supposed to be is just a black light, not a black light, but a streaming light constantly. And the camera zooms in on it so closely, it's nothing but the light. And it's like, yeah, we need a warning for this episode because that is like super dangerous, but also scary.
Just another sign of the times, because nowadays they would have totally put some kind of warning in the beginning, right? Or cut that out completely.
Right. The only other big thing that I noticed is that he's heating up spaghetti in the microwave and he opens it up and it's like burning and it's like, oh my God, how can it burn so fast? But why does he pick it up as if it's just like just a bowl?
One of my notes to ask Rob was, did that turn? It looked like it turned into sausages.
Yeah, no, I mean, those were cigars, basically.
Oh my God, yes.
What the image was, it was really quick, but those were cigars, right? But he picks up the bowl as if it wasn't heated at all. I'm like, you're saying that it got burnt, but yet you're handling this bowl as if it's like with his bare hands, like it's nothing. I just thought that was so funny. But yeah, he drops the cigars, and then you also see a footprint of his clown foot in the pudding that he dropped on the floor too. I mean, it's just more evidence that, somebody was in there.
But he also takes out every fork in the drawer for some reason.
He was super scared. And I actually really enjoyed that part too, because he's in his head. He's in this like trance. He doesn't even know what he's doing. And he's like setting the table, but all he needed was one fork and one knife. And he's just emptying out the whole tray. He's just scaring himself. And I think that a true scared person who's terrified is in their heads and they don't know that they're doing that. And I just thought that was a very realistic thing that they had in the episode.
I was going to say, he ended up actually as one of really the lucky ones.
Mm-hmm.
What gave back the nose? I think the cigars definitely helped him in that case. I think Zebo appreciated the cigars, but I'm hoping that after this, he was a better friend. The only other thing that I really stood out for me was inside the funhouse, there was that fire-breathing dragon prop, which I thought was fantastic.
But how dangerous is that, though? Like, there wasn't even a cage or anything to block the fire. Like, what did they expect those kids to do?
I wonder, because you were mentioning fun houses earlier. Have you ever been in like a good old-fashioned amusement park fun house?
The closest that I've gotten to that wasn't like super made out of like cardboard cutouts or whatever was I did go to a Halloween Horror Nights event at Universal Studios. I did go, I think 2 years ago. And I think because the theme was all movies and stuff, I felt more comfortable. But there is a section of the park where you go through this entire like rundown country town where every person is in this like Leatherface like get up and they all have chainsaws and they're chasing you around or whatever. That's probably the only big thing that I got. And the rest of it was all in good fun. But yes, that would be the closest that I've actually done like an authentic haunted house sort of deal. But if you put me in like one that's in a park that nobody knows about and the only function is the haunted house, I'm not doing it. Not doing it.
See, we would have been best friends growing up because there was this one amusement park, and it's on Long Island. It's called Adventureland. So weirdly, they made a movie about it.
I know, yeah, the Kristen Stewart one, yeah.
On this amusement park in the 80s, which shout outs in Long Island 80s amusement park. But this place opened in like I think I wrote it down, 1960 at some point. But they had this haunted house that was at the end of the park, and they had an animatronic tree that you could hear throughout the park that would just scream that he was being chased by a man in a chainsaw. Oh, terrified. I mean, as soon as you walked in, you heard this tree screaming from the whole park. I finally did it as a teenager.
Wow.
Terrified. I didn't even want to walk past the building. When I discovered when I went inside, so dark that you can't see anything, and literal trash bags as ghosts. Black trash bags on sticks. This was the most unscary haunted house. So it just goes to show you sometimes the mind is, superior to real life.
Let me just tell you how far back this fear goes for me, because it's not like I just was like, yeah, haunted houses I'm not doing. We went on okay, so this actually ties into first episode that I did with you. Remember the road trip that I told you about? We went to Disneyland. The whole family went. We went into the haunted mansion. I was the only one that came out crying, like terrified.
Was it the dancing ghosts in the ballroom?
It was the dancing ghosts. It was the hands popping out of the gravestones and the coffins, and it was the ghost in the mirror.
Oh, that goes home with you.
Yeah. So I mean, apparently even as a child, it's already hinted that I just can't do haunted house. So there you have it.
Would you do the cliche? Like, I know I would always put my hand over my eyes the whole entire time.
If I needed to, and I've done the Haunted Mansion since as a grown man. And yes, I think it's visually stunning, especially when they turn it into the whole Nightmare Before Christmas thing. So, I can laugh at it now. But back then, yeah, when I was a kid, yeah, total terrified. The only other thing that I really had about this episode was that the actor who plays Zebo in the Carney Circus person is played by this gentleman named Aaron Tager, who is a series sort of repetitive person in these episodes, and he is the one that is playing our infamous Dr. Vink. You couldn't tell at first because Dr. Vink has a full-on beard, while Zebo, the Carney, does not have a beard at all, and he also uses a different voice. So
he's very versatile, this actor.
Very versatile, but this actor also showed up in an episode of Goosebumps as well. If you remember the kid who got piano lessons, and he was a piano teacher. He was like, the hands! You have to protect the hands. That is him.
Damn, you're bringing me back.
So, this gentleman played in 6 episodes, and 5 of those 6 episodes was Mr. Vink, or Dr. Vink, and then that one off was Zebo the Clown.
He brought, the chill to that. Like you said, at the end, when he's smoking the cigar and you realize the whole time that he is Zebo. Ooh.
Yeah. This is pretty much the only time that Gary says something sort of official, other than I declare the Midnight Society closed. And this one, he didn't say it because the episode ended with the campers, or not, I shouldn't say campers, but the storytellers. One of them scares the other one because she is afraid of clowns, and they all run off. So Gary couldn't really close the meeting out because they all left. So he says, meeting adjourned. And he flings the water into the fire, and then everybody runs. So that's it. It's the only time he does not close out the show properly. So this is a very unique episode that I like. And
we get the cold opening without the normal setting up the story. And then that, I didn't even notice that.
So what I wanted to do with you, Ryan, before we get to your tale, is I wanted to talk about lessons learned. So what did we learn from this episode? Don't be a dick.
Don't be friends with Josh because he plays a villain in every 90s show.
Also, it is okay to be scared. You can be afraid. It is not a bad thing.
It does not make you any less a man.
Yes. Bullying is wrong. Bullying is so wrong. No bullying. That is another lesson. Also, do not disrespect the dead.
If anything, you do not want them following you home. I'm sorry, even if there's a chance that you could do something, that this tale was real about Zebo, I personally, yes, I would not play with fire.
And last but not least, karma is a bitch. So there are your lessons from the tale of Laughing in the Dark.
Also, to put a pot holder on your hands if you're going to take something out of the microwave.
I don't know what that was, but okay. Yeah, exactly.
So Betty Ann is your favorite storyteller, you think? Or one of them?
Yes. She has a way of mixing horror with fantasy very well. And then, like I said earlier, I think some of her endings do not end very well. The Nightly Neighbors is another example where the villain technically won, horror won. And I like that about Betty Betty Ann.
Isn't it crazy that they actually stuck with character developments? Like, this character usually does these kinds of episodes.
Yep.
I think that's genius, especially for a kids show, to remember a certain, I always want to call them counselors, as part of the Midnight Society, has like a taste and a style to their stories.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I remember when I was younger, they would sort of do their little storyline or whatever, and then they'd be like, who's going tonight? And I'm like, Betty Ann, Betty Ann, Betty Ann. And then they would call her name, and I'm like, yes, a Betty Ann story. You know, so yeah, there was a point. And then, you know, when you get Gary, you're going to hear a Sardo, and you're going to hear Vink with a Frank. And that's something to look forward to. I think that's awesome.
Kiki.
Yeah. Kiki, you're like, oh, I'm going to get people that look like me. So yay for Kiki.
Yes, I love that was part of the elements. You have to have representation. And if the person, you know, telling the story doesn't get to represent themselves.
So I'll say this, because I was going to bring this up at some point, but you keep bringing up these points, so it makes sense to do it now. The Nickelodeon Are You Afraid of the Dark show, diversity was a very strong mandate at Nickelodeon as a whole. So with that being said, the series ended up being nominated for an NAACP award. Nickelodeon also turned away kids if they were too Disney.
I love that.
So DJ McHale, described as apple pie, freckles, cute, or over-the-top act, you could not be on our show.
That might have grounded it really in reality as well, because this is a grittier show than nothing was like this. I mean, the Goosebumps, but...
And this show definitely did have diversity, and we'll definitely get into that with your episode as we get one of our few interracial coupling.
And what a classic episode. Funny, you were just mentioning, it's Zebo, and then we continue our episode. Okay, so the second episode of the second season, so we both somehow picked episode 2 of the season that we ended up picking, but this is the Tale of the Midnight Madness. I loved this episode as a kid, and I've loved it even more watching it over again.
Yeah, I mean, this has to do with movies, so of course
both of our out.
It had an usher, or an employee who was also black. I worked at a theater. This was me on screen, and I love that. So yes, this episode is very close to me.
Maybe that's why I picked it. I felt this in my heart.
No, great episode.
And Pete is the character that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout this whole thing, I love this character's dedication to saving this historic theater. So basically, it's this old-time theater that I don't know how long it was open. I don't think I have a certain date that it was open, but it's a movie theater called the Rialto.
Yes.
And it's one of those classic looking theaters that hopefully, praying that all of our movie theaters in 2020 stay open. But this is very topical. They're trying to stay open. They're not making money. The movies that they're showing evidently aren't doing for these people. There's this one old lady that seems to be the only patron that comes that we see. And Pete wants to save this. He's out there putting flyers. I love this kid's dedication. So we have the two characters. One is Pete, which is Rob on film. And the other female lead is Katie, which is his love interest, or he wants it to be a love interest. Although Katie is oblivious, I feel like, to all of his advances.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Yeah, I was going to bring that up later.
So we want to save the theater. They're struggling. There's this one manager that's, every cliche to feel like Italian manager in a movie or something.
Just all in it for the money.
All in for the money. Matter of fact, they made $6 on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, they only showed older films, and it was only one screen. So if you didn't want to see the literal movie that they were showing that week, nothing.
Which I could understand, especially if you're showing the same movie night after night.
Yeah.
The movie theater is doing so bad that Katie is reusing the cups that Pete gathered when he is cleaning out the theater. I could not believe this. I texted Rob. I stopped the episode when I was watching it. This nasty lady, Katie, she dumped the woman, this older woman that keeps coming. She leaves her cup on the concession stand. Katie dumps the ice and the rest of the soda on the floor and puts it back in the stack. I was taken back by Katie. I know you're not doing well, but you got a whole stack there. No one's coming. Use a new cup, Katie.
Saving money, I guess.
She's really saving it. I don't think the manager asked for that. It's not coming out of her pay. He's actually looking for another job. So Pete is nervous because he wants to ask her out or at least work with her a little more because this is his crush. She don't care. She's looking for another job. And then Dr. Vink comes one night with a canister and his movie. So he tells him that his movie is different, where it's a vampire movie. The vampire ends up not being killed at the end of the movie, and it's not your typical horror movie in that. And I believe it's also a silent movie, which is another part. So he makes an offer to save the theater, play his movie, and then if it does well, he wants one night a week to play his other film. Which at that point, hell, they're not doing great. Why not take him up on the offer? The manager agrees.
So he leaves the canister. The manager's like, whatever. I don't believe him. He sounds like, because how can he guarantee that people are going to come? And so he just like throws it out. But Pete keeps it, and then they just continue on doing
they're
what
showing
they're
a
doing.
montage of Pete trying to save the theater again, flyers.
Yeah.
This kid is dedicated to his job. So it turns out they're going to be closing in 2 weeks. So Pete remembers that they have the canister. And it just so happens that they got lucky that the current movie playing that night, projector explodes or goes on fire.
And how does it do that? The movie willed it.
Ooh, good point.
Yeah, the movie needed to be played, and so the canister sort of glows and it destroys the movie. And so now you have to play our movie. I mean, we had to make a move. You weren't going to make the move. I'm going to make it for you.
But you know, they didn't seem too bad that night when Katie tells them that they're going to give them money. The whole place is full.
I love the fact that they've got so many customers at one time. And I was like, oh, what happened to like never having any kind of...
And right, you mentioned earlier, they only play old black and white movies at this theater. When she mentions it's a silent film, these people groan and you're watching a black and white movie. I mean, I know the film is...
Yeah.
At that point, yes, it is going back even further, but that same old woman's in the audience again. You almost think that something was going to... If you didn't know, like if you're watching this for the first time, you might feel like, oh, I wonder if she's part of the plan. No, she must just live locally. Yeah. So they put the movie on, and it is a Nosferatu-type vampire with that classic look of Nosferatu, the silent film. Pale, long fingers. I like my vampires with the long fingers. I don't know about you, Rob.
Yeah, no, his fingers, I think, were his best feature. No, I mean, we can talk about, like, you know, how grotesque and scary he looked, the veins and whatnot, but just him grabbing the door and those long fingers, you can hear it crackling. I thought that was his best, scariest feature of Nosferatu in this episode.
You're right. He, again, with doors in this show, all it needs to take is show a shadow underneath a door, and this time, that hand, oh my god.
Yeah. No, so good.
And like Rob said, he is a veiny fella. The vampire comes off the screen, much like an episode of the 1998 Charm series, Chick Flick, where the Demon of Illusions was bringing movies to life. But this time, Dr. Vink, I guess magically, his film, the vampire comes off the screen. That's how he came off the screen. Pete thought it was a dream. Then he's running amok. Oh yes, their manager gets bitten. So they're kind of, okay, there's a vampire, something's going on here. Oh yeah, we get to the part where our lovely sweet Pete is about to maybe get a kiss. And this is when we hear a scream and then we find the manager bitten. So the boy never got his kiss with Katie. And then we get this montage of the Nosferatu is only really in the theater. They just keep going back to different rooms. And it turns out that Katie ends up in the projection room and Peter is in the theater. And he decides, I guess, to see if what's happening and how Nosferatu got off the screen. So he touches the screen and he too goes into the movie. It's the opposite. He goes into the movie, becomes black and white, and Nosferatu's out. Katie says she's going to shut the film off. Pete, the smart guy that he is, says, no, then I'll be stuck in here. Makes sense. So to end the show, Nosferatu goes back into the movie where Pete is stuck, and he decides to open the window, and Nosferatu burns up in the sunlight, much like your classic vampire movie.
Yeah. So yeah, Pete wanted to do what the main character was supposed to do from the start, which is put the coffin in the sunlight, and he just wanted to finish the job. And then Nosferatu came in and tried to stop him, and instead he just pulled the curtain down because the villain won in the original and he wanted to change it, so that's why he wanted to go inside. But yeah, you know, awesome ending. I love when Nosferatu comes back into the film and then he does that like boom, like he just popped in, and did you think it was out of place for Nosferatu to yell and you could hear his voice when he was getting
Right,
burnt?
because this is technically supposed to be a silent.
Movie. We didn't hear one peep out of him when he was in the real world. Did you think it was out of place, or was there a reason why he got to speak, or we got
I
to
think
hear?
the only reason I thought of watching it this time was because we could hear Pete speaking, so maybe we're hearing what it was like inside the movie where those characters can hear each other. But you're right. That was out of place. I wonder if they almost. But I love that
Yeah.
Pete, like you said, he drags the coffin so easily. He just picks that shit up and just drags it like it was cardboard. Possibly was.
Yeah.
So at the end of this, Dr. Vink comes back and he has bought the movie theater. The movie theater is saved, but now he can show his movies every night.
Well, that's I love that laugh. So yeah, that was the sort of pivotal move of his, right? And maybe we'll talk about this later. Well, actually, you know what? No, let's bring it up later. Scratch what I was about to say. I will bring up later. So continue. What were you gonna do?
So I loved how that ended. I love that twist. Hopefully Katie and Pete quit and go on to greener pastures.
You wonder if they have a responsibility to like continue to stop them or make sure these movies aren't played. Like we can definitely have this ending of like, oh no, he's gonna play more movies, but it's like, do they just go on with their lives, or do they feel like they have a responsibility to make sure people know that you're in danger? Like you wonder how this could have ended.
Well, what was the ultimate plot, you think, too? Like, Dr. Vink did want to just kill some people? Like, what was his ultimate goal with bringing these characters off the screen?
And that's what's so crazy about this character, this Dr. Vink. We don't know what he's a doctor of. His backstory and his reasoning for being seems to change all the time. He always has these different professions, but I think it's to just invoke fear. It's just to spread fear around the world. That's the only thing that I can think
Spreading
of,
fear.
because everything that he seems to do in each story that he plays in, with the exception of Cutter's Treasure, is he's either a very curious human being that just wants to discover all of these different things that are in the world that we don't know
Right.
exist, or he wants to manipulate people's fear. And that's the only thing that I can think of. He is a doctor that is fascinated with people getting scared.
When you mention fear, I wonder if it's almost like, this is going back to us being Charmed fans, but I wonder if he's almost like an entity that maybe feeds off fear. I would love to hear more about Dr. Vink. I mean, he does make, like you said, other appearances, but yeah, like a Dr. Vink prequel.
Yeah, I would love a backstory to this, but yeah, we don't really get to learn exactly who he is and why he's doing this. But yeah, I particularly like this one a lot because, again, the whole movie aspect, and I think it genuinely was scary. It did have some horror elements for sure in this. I thought Nosferatu's makeup was brilliant.
Yes.
Really, really well. The music theme of Nosferatu, just in the silent film, I love that score so much. I love that
movie
score.
Is terrifying, and it does not need anything. Like you said, the score adds to it. That movie, just seeing his shadow in certain parts of that movie, and they captured that Nosferatu in this show so well, like the original silent Nosferatu movie. So good.
Yeah. What I thought was funny, though, was that there was this side storyline of Pete trying to get this girl. And I was like, it really didn't have anything to do with the story, but for some reason they wanted this kid to continue trying to go out with this girl. And it was weird because she denies him the first time. And then the second time she kind of plays with him, knowing that he likes her, and then agrees, and then almost kissed him. So it's just like, I don't even know, like, do you really like this dude? I don't know, it just seemed weird. I don't know the time frame had passed, like between the first time he asked her out versus the second, but it's like, what's changed since then?
Well, I wonder if it was a bunch of time, because he did mention that when Dr. Vink comes back, he's like, oh, we don't need you anymore. We're doing great again, or something like that. So I wonder if it did take a few months, maybe of...
It probably did. Maybe she just grew more into him or whatnot. It's just her hesitation before, I just thought was interesting, because we didn't get his heroic moment until after she agreed to go out with him.
It wasn't like that made her turn on all of a sudden.
What changed your mind? I don't know, but I just thought that was an interesting side plot for this episode.
I'll tell you what would have changed my mind if I was Pete, having her dunk those cups out and reuse them. What else does this girl do at her house?
Well, so a couple of things that I noticed from this episode and that I also read about. DJ Mac Hales, who is, showrunner of the show. I went to a horror convention. It's called Midsummer Scream, and they have it in Long Beach here in California every year. And I was so happy to be able to do this. They had a panel, and it always came out around my birthday weekend. So it was actually on my birthday that I got to go to this panel.
Wow.
And so DJ Mac Hales was there and a whole bunch of fans, and he just talked about the history and all that good stuff. I went there and I got to bring my very custom made that I made myself. I wore a hoodie that I made, and it's nothing extravagant or whatever, but I had some custom lettering on there. And this is what I have. It has member of the Midnight Society from 91 to 96.
Screenshot because I need this in my life. Okay, so Rob and I are talking through Zoom and we can see each other. This hoodie is amazing. It says member of the Midnight Society, 91 to 96. Did he get to see this?
I was in the audience. I didn't really stand up and present myself. He did not, but other people did notice it and give me sort of props for having it on or whatnot. But yeah, I had to get it made because I am such a big fan, and I wanted to treat it like a college jersey and whatnot. I got college letters
on this is so college. It looks like you would see like a college jersey or college sweatshirt.
So at the panel, he was asked what his favorite episode is. DJ Mac Hale, he said Midnight Madness.
This was his wow.
This was his favorite episode of the series. So you picked a really good one.
I'm so glad because you know what? When I was wanting to do this with you, this was the episode that always stood out to me. I feel like I too just love that movie theater aspect. Something about a theater, something about a silent film, and vampires.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you really dig vampires.
I guess, and I guess with the long fingers, unless we're talking sexy vampires, because I don't want my David Boreanaz angel with long fingers. But we're talking about vampires. Give me the long fingers. Give me the nails that are overgrown.
Okay, so let's talk about the cast for a second to segue from your vampire loveness. So the actor who plays Nosferatu in this episode, so he is Harry Stanjovsky. No, I'm sorry, excuse me. So the actor who plays Nosferatu in this episode is named Christopher Heyerdahl. So this actor has a very distinctive face. And anytime that I see him, it's like, I know you. You are, Nosferatu. But he is also shows up in another episode called The 13th Floor.
The 13th Floor.
Right, that's right. So he is the tall elevator operator, one of the 3 aliens that show up on the 13th floor. So he has a very square hairline, long hair, but he is the elevator operator. If you remember, it's the same.
I can remember that they looked very everything was very angular with their hair, and their clothing was such a 90s looking abstracty clothes.
And so he was in that episode, but then he also, this is not the first time he's played a vampire. So he also played Vampire Marcus in the Twilight films. He was one of the 3, the leaders.
Wait, what does this man look like in real life?
Look him up. He's Vampire Marcus, who sat, I think, left chair to Michael Sheen's character when he was lead vampire.
100%. Okay. Iceman's face now, if you saw it with him out of makeup, 100%, you would know this man.
Which, again, is another compliment to the makeup used for Nosferatu. I mean, he's unrecognizable, but again, the acting and his mannerisms, you can totally see this guy. So I love that. But here's the other thing. So in 13th Floor, had a very young Aaron Ashmore, who is twin brother to Sean Ashmore, who was Iceman in our X-Men films. So in this episode, there is heavy ties to X-Men. So Harry Stanjovsky, so he played Mr. Kristoff, our manager.
Yeah.
He was a groundskeeper in Days of Future Past.
Which is one of my favorite out of...
Yeah, so there was a smaller role for a groundskeeper, and he was there, and I recognized him. I was like, he's from Midnight Madness. And our very own Mr. Dr. Vink, Aaron Tager, he played an MC in the original X-Men movie when he was introducing Wolverine, when he was fighting. Yeah, he was the MC. Dr. Vink was the MC. Yeah, so heavy ties to X-Men. I love that. Our Miss Katie, our unsanitary employee, Melanie Weisenthal. This was her literal only role she's ever done. Yeah, I looked her up. She has not done anything else besides this.
Not even a soup commercial.
Yeah. I thought that I would see her in more because I actually enjoyed her acting.
Yeah, she totally plays that character. You know, that kind of girl that, I'll get another job. Don't care. I'm only here until it's good enough for me, and then I'm out. I don't care about you, Pete. The only other thing I did want to ask you I don't know if we'll ever get to do another Are You Afraid of the Dark favorite episodes. I would love to in the future. But are there other episodes that stand out for you that you absolutely love?
Definitely. Okay. I don't know how much time you have. I'll try and keep this small, but there are two off the bat that I will mention. If you want more, I'll give you more. The first one is The Tale of the Crimson Clown.
Oh.
Now, yes, I'm dealing with another clown story, but I'm telling you, they utilize the clown aspect very, very well, which, by the way, had a Zebo cameo because it is about a kid who is very, very bad, and his brother teased him, and he was like, if you don't behave, then the Crimson Clown will come and get you. And they were supposed to buy a present for his mother for her birthday. He steals the money and buys a video game. The video game is Zebo the Clown. Zebo the Clown shows up on a video cartridge cover art.
God.
And yeah, the only other time you will see Zebo the Clown, I think. The Crimson Clown, I thought, was super scary because the antics that the clown was pulling to scare this kid, it was very Freddy Krueger to such a degree. The voice about you've been bad, this kid was getting attacked. I'm sorry, like this kid went through it, and I really, really enjoyed the tricks and the special effects and the set pieces that were used. They had the hand coming out of the TV, and he was getting attacked in bed. There were a lot of fake outs that were done very well, but this is what I found really crazy about it. So the clown. This is from an episode in season 3. The clown that's in the episode was sold on eBay for almost $11,600.
Holy crap! That must have been. I can't even imagine the person that bought that. That is a collector's item.
And this clown definitely pays heavy homage to the clown from the Poltergeist films and whatnot. There's a little bit of tie with that, but that is a really good episode. The other one that I'll say right off the bat that is amazing is Dead Man's Float. It's probably the scariest one out of the entire series.
I feel like people think of Zebo and Dead Man's Float. Oh, it comes up.
Dead Man's Float is amazing. So good. And a very, very, very young Jay Baruchel. I don't know if you know who this kid is. Do you know who Jay Baruchel is? So he was the sorcerer's apprentice to Nicolas Cage in the Disney film.
Oh, holy crap.
You know who he is.
Yes.
Yeah, he's part of the, Seth Rogen team. This is the end. He's the one in the movie that loves Backstreet Boys or whatever. So he plays the little boy that drowns in the beginning. He was sort of the first victim. So you remember in Dead Man's Float, the janitor is working there to make sure nobody discovers the swimming pool and whatever. He was a lifeguard at the time, and he had his girlfriend over, and her little brother drowned. He was the little brother.
But speaking of that, I love that fact. But I always wondered with Dead Man's Float, why didn't they drain that pool if it was such a...
Well, yeah, I mean, they just covered up, they hid it, and I don't know why they didn't, how can you prove anything happened? It was just an accident, but the fact that a kid died in there, they just covered it up with the wall. And
just cover it up. Why not? Cover it up with a wall.
Exactly. Captured Souls only because it was a black dominated cast list. I love that. The Crimson Clown because it was so good. Just what a villain. Ghastly Grinner, what a freaking villain. I love it.
Grinner.
The other one that I'll highlight is from the Revival series. It's actually, I think, the literal first episode of the Revival series, and I want to say maybe Tucker, Gary's brother, is the one who told the story. I could be wrong, but it's the tale of the Forever Game. And it's almost like Phantom Cab. It just has these two kids who get lost in the woods just like they did, and they come upon this tree that has a hole in it, and inside is this little boy who is for some reason stuck in there, but he wants to play a board game, and the board game affects the atmosphere and the environment of the woods. So it's like Jumanji and I love Jumanji. So of course this game, but I love board games. So this episode definitely stood out. Anytime they landed on something, it would affect the outside, and I really love that episode. So even though, yes, we got a revival, it was a little watered down, more kiddish. Don't hate on the Revival series. There are a lot of good episodes that came out of the Revival.
I did not see really any of that series.
I wish those were on DVD, and they're not. I wish they were, but they had some really good episodes come out of that.
And they brought back Gary? Is this in the...
No, they brought back Tucker, Gary's little brother.
Okay. So, Gary doesn't make an appearance.
Yeah, our DeSantos from Mean Girls. Yeah.
Do you know what episode really also... It was between... it was between the episode I picked today and also the Tia and Tamara episode with
the Chameleons. Yes,
this episode traumatized me also because at the end the evil chameleon gets away with it.
Yeah, she picked the wrong one.
Oh my god. And that poor friend, she was fighting tooth and nail. Well, first off, Tia or Tamara, the character, whoever it was that she was playing, didn't do anything wrong either. She, matter of fact, is stopping this kid that's tormenting animals in a pet shop. That's why I felt terrible for her. And then she got bit by was it a chameleon? Yeah, it was
a chameleon. I mean, they're in it for themselves. That they didn't care. Yes, you are a protector of animals, but I'm trying to live. I want to be human. I'm getting out of here.
And getting out of here, she does, or he, the chameleon. I don't know if it was, but the fact that the friend picked the wrong girl, gives me chills. And she threw her down the well or something, like in a well or something at the end.
Yeah, something like that happened. Oh, sad.
And then there's also the I'm cold episode that
the Frozen Ghost.
The Frozen Ghost. I feel like this is only known because it's the Melissa Joan Hart episode.
Yeah, this is when they really wanted to start bringing in some star power into the show, and she was one of the very first special guests that actually had a career.
So is this when we went to, I guess we're full on Nickelodeon at this point, and Nick is maybe trying to cross promote Clarissa / Are You Afraid of the Dark? Snick.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other episode that always sticks out to me is when the poor girl gets stuck in the dollhouse that her friend or her...
So everyone loves the dollhouse one, and I don't see it. I watch it, and I think she looks super sad in her half-done makeup as a doll. I think some of the elements are creepy, like her almost falling out of the door. Nothing's there. Don't you see? He's look, there's nothing there. And I'm wow, that revelation is really terrifying. But I don't get the appeal of the dollhouse episode. Everybody loves this. I don't see it.
I don't think it's a great episode. I just feel like I get scarred for life when these children are stuck in things and they can never see their families ever again, and then they
You have a lot of people who agree with you on this, so it's just me. I don't know, but I just can't see it. But I mean, I get it. It's a good one, but everyone really likes this one.
I think I might be because I mix up that one with the one when the girl that she was mute and she couldn't escape and she wrote on the walls and I feel like I get those mixed up because it took place in a house, but there's a ghost that.
No, they're very similar. So that was, I think, the third episode. That was the Lonely Ghost.
The Lonely Ghost, yes.
Yeah, the Lonely Ghost. Yeah.
Her cousin like dares her to go next to her mean redhead. It's always a redhead in this show.
Always a redhead.
So Rob, going with your theme earlier, what are the lessons learned in this episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Okay, so you go first. This is your episode. What's the lessons learned from you? What did you get?
I was gonna say, don't try to save your job by handing out flyers because no one will care. Also, don't try to hit on your coworker if she's so uninterested in you. I felt so bad for him.
I did too. I don't see the point in this storyline, but he was really trying, and I commend him for not giving up. That was one of my lessons: was don't give up when it comes to a person that you admire or a thing that you believe in. I think that Pete definitely set a very good example of somebody that should never quit on something that they really want. You know, not to guarantee that it'll work. Obviously, in this case, the episode did not end in the protagonist's favor, but I think it's a really good lesson to just continue trying. Do not let a no or a rejection stop you.
And that boy did two things. He didn't want saving the theater, and he was going for her, and he did both with heart.
Yeah.
He kind of did save the theater in a weird way.
Yeah. Pretty much.
And the only other lesson I can think of is when you go to this theater, make sure you bring your own drinks. I don't know. One pub was probably from the garbage, knowing Katie.
Oh my god, right? Yeah.
I me out so much, but just the thought of a stranger's thing that was on the floor or just sticky on the floor in a movie theater. You know, those people are throwing those cups. Those damn people, they don't put their garbage away.
I totally get it. The only lessons I have here is, appreciate the golden age of silent films, appreciate classic films, things like that. And then I also have here, do not make promises that you cannot keep. This is something that I was going to bring up earlier during your description of the episode, but the only reason why Nosferatu came out of the film is because they did not honor the promise that in the deal that was given to them that he had to show one of his movies a night a week. Now, he rejected this because since they were popular, they were getting newer films to show on the weekend. So they would lose money if they didn't show these newer films. He's thinking business, and he did not live up to his promise. That's the only reason why Nosferatu came out.
But how new were these films, by the way? It's all black and white, right? So it looked like a old Western movie.
But that's the thing. I think that nobody wanted to put any sort of blockbuster film in this theater. Now, I don't know if the Rialto was made only to show classics, but they wanted to sort of go into the business of showing the same films at multiplexes. So the canister made the other film break so they can show the other one. Therefore, they would get popular, and then Vink would have a way to show his other film. But they broke the promise, and that's why Nosferatu came out. So they wouldn't even have to deal with this crap if they had just stuck to what they were supposed to do. So that is my last lesson.
And why didn't I get that the first for my lesson? That's the most important lesson of this whole episode. That's 100% the lesson.
Some of the quotes that I love from this episode too is he found like the cheesiest way to like touch her when the theater was like a hit, and he's like, "Let's hug again." And I'm like, oh my God, it's so cheesy. I love that line. But what I also thought was very pivotal of this episode too is that, they see the manager getting bit, and, Pete's like, I think I saw Nosferatu come out of the film. And Katie's like, movies aren't real. And I was just like, I really like that line because it definitely just divides this whole, like, you better start believing, otherwise you're going to die. But it was like, movies aren't real. They're not. And, Dr. Vink, he's like, I don't want your popcorn money. I love that line so much. I just thought that was so good.
I love that he pulls out the deed to the theater out of a popcorn
Yeah,
at the end of the show.
so classy.
Such a funny, but that hug, I laughed so hard rewatching that.
So
That
good.
moves. I mean, that seems like a good read. So I want to thank my co-host for this week, Rob. Again, he is so knowledgeable on everything that I love, and I just love hearing his opinions on things and going over all of these memories that were so important to me as a child and reliving them each week, especially with people like Rob. It's just a wonderful experience to be able to do this. And Rob, again, where can the people find you?
All right. Well, if any of you are interested in the other two podcasts that I do run currently right now, I have a movie podcast called Movie Geek and Proud. I'm on Twitter at MGNP Podcast. And you can also look up us on Instagram at Movie Geek and Proud, all one word. We also have the Charm Podcast on Twitter, BWTH Podcast. And we are on Instagram, Brunch with the Halliwells, all one word. And Movie Geek and Proud is a little bit on hiatus, but we're going to come back super strong after the election. And Brunch with the Halliwells is currently every Sunday during brunch.
I know where I am every Sunday. They're having brunch with Rob and Sean, and we're here in Charmed Memories.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for having me on your show again. I cannot wait to do our next episode.
Next week, we are talking about another classic movie. This time, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. It's a Halloween movie. What could it be?
Oh my god, I'm so excited. And anybody who wants to prep for this movie, it is currently on Hulu. I cannot wait.
Thank you again, Rob. Again, the show, Radical Retro Podcast on Instagram, one word as well. Thank you so much for listening this week. And remember these lessons, everybody. Keep your promises and open the right door, or you might meet Zebo.
The end.
Wow. So the Ryan in this story, is that you?
That was my podcast. Not many people have a voice like this.
And the guy who you did the episode with, what was his name again?
Geeky Rob, all one word.
And you said this took place in October, right?
That's right. Right around Halloween time.
Ryan, I looked this guy up.
Yeah?
And it says that he died in July of that same year.
What?
Do you think?
No way. His voice was so clear. With that being said, I declare this meeting of the Midnight Society closed.